A few months ago, I got on a little bit of a PlayStation VR kick, and I started asking around about what other games I should be checking out for the PSVR. And one game kept coming up over and over and over again, and that was Beat Saber. Beat Saber came up so often, I almost got annoyed to ask other people what games they would recommend because I knew it was going to be Beat Saber over and over again. And I'm not sure why I was so put off by the idea of Beat Saber. I knew what it was conceptually, and if you don't, it's essentially Fruit Ninja meets Guitar Hero with a Tron coat of paint, but with lightsabers. So I guess there's a dash of Star Wars there too, obviously. The point is, I was only vaguely aware that it was a rhythm game, and I think one of my hesitations really stemmed from the fact that subconsciously I just sort of assumed that I wasn't going to be in good enough shape to actually play this game or do any good at it. So in turn, I think I was just prepared to refuse playing this game rather than actually give it a fair shake. But after trying it briefly over Christmas when my dad got the PSVR Beat Saber bundle for my mom, which I'm still convinced was just a ploy so he'd get his hands on Borderlands VR, I actually found that yes, I very much could play this game, and in fact, I had a lot of fun doing it. So whenever I got back to Columbus, the first thing I did was go ahead and buy it, and I have to say that was one of the best things that I did this year. And I realize that sounds super dramatic for a video game purchase, but please, bear with me as I explain to you 5 reasons that Beat Saber made my life so much better in a very big way. For starters, Beat Saber became this cornerstone and very much an anchor for my morning routine. Now, every day when I wake up, I normally get up around 5:30 or 6, and I say around 5:30 or 6 because I am criminally good at disabling multiple alarms, even when they are spread out all over my room, but now, ever since February 1st when I started getting up and actually playing Beat Saber, it's so much easier for me to get up in the mornings and sort of get moving, knowing that I have the fun of Beat Saber waiting for me. And that's not just because I want more trophies, although admittedly that does feel pretty great, but rather it's because I feel so much better after playing it even for a short while, which generally on average I've been playing 45 minutes a day for about the past 40 to 45 days at this point. Next up, it was a huge improvement to my focus. My idea of exercise is not particularly glamorous. Essentially, I did the bare minimum every morning, which was going for a walk. Which, quick disclaimer, if that's all you can do or all you're inclined to do, that's still much better than being stagnant not doing anything with your body every day, so I'm not saying this to discourage you. But while you can distract yourself pretty easily on a treadmill and just look at your phone, you basically cannot do this playing Beat Saber. That's because both of your hands are occupied swinging around lightsabers in order to hit a bunch of colored notes as they fly at your face. Oh, and let's not forget you've got that whole VR headset thing strapped to you as well, so messing around on your phone is basically impossible. The only thing you can do is focus on the present task at hand, which is to make sure that you are slicing all of these notes as they rush towards you. At first I thought this would be supremely annoying, as I was sacrificing the time that I usually use to start engaging on social or get YouTube productivity tasks sort of in line so I could get closer to my goal of going full time with this channel. But after a few days I found that mentally I was so much fresher when getting started. As a matter of fact, I didn't sweat losing that time at all. I mean, yes, I literally sweated, but seriously, I didn't miss the time that I used to spend taking off stuff on my to-do list during my pseudo walks whatsoever, and it really was incredibly refreshing to simply focus on the task at hand, again, which was really just to cut all of these colored blocks in rhythm to the music. Next up, I feel like it really improved my emotional health. Now I'm intentionally separating mental health and emotional health, one, because I'm not a doctor and I'm not positive I'm using these terms correctly, but two, there really were distinct advantages that I could see in one versus the other. For example, while I could appreciate the advantages of being more focused on tasks or just feeling more refreshed mentally whenever I went to do things after I got done playing Beat Saber, I also found that I just felt a lot better about myself in my head and was way less prone to getting into funks than I normally would. One of the things that I've found that is a byproduct of my anxiety is I tend to get into these lethargic fits where I just don't want to think about anything, everything seems very big and scary or overwhelming, and one of the first things that I want to do is just sort of shut down, which usually involves taking a lot of naps or just completely zoning out if I can, or really just avoiding any kind of work, which, as you can imagine, is not a good fit for somebody who wants to go full-time on YouTube. Throw in the fact that most weeks I'm burning the candle at both ends, working 40 to 50 hours a week at my day job, and at least as much time also working on YouTube, and you can see how that's basically a recipe for an emotional disaster. But one of the things that I noticed throughout February was that I was way less prone to these types of emotional crashes than I had been in the past. And it makes sense because there are a ton of studies and evidence out there that suggest that taking that first step of physical activity can actually help alleviate some of the symptoms that come along with anxiety and depression. And make no mistake, in Beat Saber you would take many steps and slices. Mainly slices, but also a few steps. I'm not saying Beat Saber will solve all your emotional problems, this is just a reflection of my personal use with the game and how I just tended to feel better than I normally did throughout the month of February. Next up, physically I felt so much better. Eventually. So yes, mentally I felt way better having played Beat Saber every day, and that makes sense, right? You're burning calories, you're using muscles that you wouldn't normally use, you're flooding your brain with endorphins, so all these things kind of work together to make sure that you feel better mentally, but you will also feel much better physically, again, eventually. And I say eventually because at first, it totally sucked. But as you start reaching expert level and beyond, you're going to be moving a lot. And if you're someone who has a sedentary lifestyle like myself, and so many other gamers that tend to fit that stereotype sometimes, you will use muscles you didn't know you had, and pain will remind you of their existence. Because you're doing a fairly intense aerobic workout every morning when you play Beat Saber, you can certainly expect some soreness, especially in your arms and legs. What I didn't expect was soreness in my core, because as barriers fly at you during play, you have to squat and bend and move that part of your body a lot. Also, I was using terrible form in that first week or so, which left a lot of soreness with my lower back that I was eventually able to compensate for, but that can factor into it as well. But after I got through that initial pain of my body warming up to this new, continuous movement, I felt fantastic. I noticed I was more alert despite not necessarily getting more sleep, and to top it all off, I was in a lot less pain than I normally was. Why would I normally be in pain? That would be because I have a degenerative order between my C6 and my C7 vertebrae. Long story short, a few years ago I had a near miss on the highway when I was driving home from work. And the next day I woke up shambling into work like the Crypt Keeper for reasons unknown to me. That is until x-rays would reveal that the fatty disc that separates my C6 and my C7 decided it was just going to start phoning it in my 30s, and it was a little bit thinner than the other ones were. Thankfully, after some steroids and some physical therapy, I was mostly tip-top again. But ever since then, there have been two sort of gnawing irritations that have been a byproduct of that experience. One is my left arm consistently feels like a little bit weaker than my right arm does, and the other thing is these two fingers don't have full sensation in them even, years later at this point. Beyond that, normally I'm fine unless I sleep weird or take a sudden jolt to the neck or something like that. Then I can have some, upper back, neck, and shoulder pain. Most days it's not that noticeable, but I never know when something's going to agitate it. But after getting over the initial system shock of my body's healthy soreness and my brain begging me to stop this madness and get back to something more familiar, like gaming from the couch, I did find that I was in a lot less pain than I normally would be on a day-to-day basis. And that's great, because it's really hard to focus on editing YouTube videos when it feels like you just got DDT'd by Jake the Snake. And finally, I started closing the rings on my Apple Watch like a beast. The Apple Watch has 3 rings it tracks every day. Movement, which just tracks literally you're moving around doing day-to-day stuff. Exercise, which is like movement, except it's also looking for your heart rate to increase to a certain level. And finally, standing hours, which is a nice little reminder for IT nerds like me not to stay huddled over a desk all day like some scoliosis-ridden Gringotts employee, and to get up and walk around a little bit. And as you close the rings, it will remind you to do things like stand up, or say, hey, you closed your movement ring yesterday, do it again today. It's brilliantly subtle and a great way to keep yourself motivated to stay active and reap all of the benefits that I've outlined here so far. And it does all this not just with positive reinforcement or nice little reminders to sort of keep you on track or just reminding you to take a few minutes out of your day to breathe, but in other ways as well. For instance, looking at the history on the fitness app of the iPhone and seeing all of the times that you've managed to close your rings, especially if you manage to do it over an entire month or an entire year in some cases, really is fulfilling, and it really is motivating in its own way for you to sort of keep that trend going of remaining committed to physical activity. And really, what are fitness bands if not more boring, harder video games that you have to play with your whole body? You do the thing, you're rewarded with a dopamine hit to your brain that makes you feel good about it. Sounds gamey to me. And not only did I find that playing Beat Saber for 45 minutes to an hour a day, having closing my fitness and movement rings right at the beginning of the day, but I also got my first ever 300% movement award, which really felt good to see that finally unlock. Alright, so those are just 5 of the ways that Beat Saber has just had a really positive impact on my life this year, and it's no doubt a contender for me for Game of the Year, even though it didn't even come out this year, but for my personal pick, definitely up there, because it's been a tremendously positive impact for me. So if you're somebody who's been curious about Beat Saber, if you have any questions about it, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to do my best to answer those. And if you're somebody who's been on the fence, you don't know if you can do it, you don't know if it's worth trying it, take the leap. I promise it's absolutely worth it, and you will have a blast doing it. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. That would be totally rad, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.